Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to close your eyes for a moment and picture this. You're standing in the heat of the desert, the sun is blistering, the wind is thick with dust. You're surrounded by enemies who want nothing more than to silence you because you dared to believe in something greater than yourself, and yet you stand tall, you stand firm, you don't flinch because you've tapped into a strength so deep, so raw, so real that nothing can shake you. This was not a fantasy. This was the life of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Let me tell you right now, these were not superheroes. These were men and women who were just like you, but they made one powerful choice. They chose to stop playing small. They chose to stop surviving and start leading. They chose to live not for comfort, but for conviction. And if you're here today, if you're hearing this, it means you're being called to the same level of power. Transformation is a decision, not a condition. Look at Bilal ibn Rabah, a black slave in Mecca, tortured, chained, scorched on burning sand for simply saying, Ahadun Ahad, one God, one God. Did he break? No. Did he quit? Never. He didn't wait for the world to give him power. He decided to step into power. How many of you are waiting for conditions to be right before you rise, waiting for approval, waiting for the money, waiting for the confidence? You don't wait for greatness. You decide to become it right now in this moment. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's moving through it. Let's talk about Umar ibn al-Khattab. He was once a fierce opponent of Islam, but when truth cracked open his heart, he didn't tiptoe into faith. He walked straight into the house where Muslims were praying, declared his faith loudly, and said, if anyone has a problem with it, meet me outside. That's the kind of energy we need today. Too many people are whispering their dreams, afraid of being judged, afraid of being rejected, afraid of being different. But hear this, the path to greatness is littered with fear, and every one of the Prophet's companions felt it. They just didn't let fear drive. They looked fear in the face and said, you can ride in the backseat, but I'm behind the wheel now. Purpose fuels power. What made these men and women so unstoppable? Was it weapons? No. Was it wealth? Absolutely not. It was purpose. Clear, divine purpose. They knew why they were fighting, why they were sacrificing, why they were praying. When your why is strong enough, your how will show up. Look at Mus'ab ibn Umayr. He was the most fashionable, wealthiest young man in Mecca. He gave it all up, traded silk for scars because he had a vision bigger than the mirror. You want to become unshakable? Get clear on your mission, burn the fluff, strip away the excuses, find your why, and your life will never be the same. Unity defeats the ego. You want to build a movement. You want to build a legacy. Then kill your ego. The companions weren't competing for spotlight. They were competing for service. They cried if someone else outdid them in charity or prayer, not out of envy, but out of inspiration. They were a tribe of leaders who lifted each other up. That's what happens when ego dies and brotherhood is born. The Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam didn't just build a religion, he built a bond. A family of warriors who were willing to die for each other, not fight each other. And we need that energy today, in our homes, in our communities, in our hearts, because divided minds build nothing. But united hearts, they shake the world. Legacy is built in moments of sacrifice. Some of you want success, but you're still clinging to comfort. Let me tell you about Abu Bakr. When the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam called for help to fund the army of Tabuk, he brought everything he owned, not half, not 10%, everything. That's not just generosity, that's immortality. Because every act of sacrifice builds a legacy. Every time you do what's hard, every time you give when it hurts, every time you choose faith over fear, you're writing your name in the book of legends. And let me say this, no one remembers those who played it safe. History only remembers those who gave everything for what they believed in. So I ask you now, what are you fighting for? What is the mission that's going to make your life unforgettable? Because when you decide to rise like Bilal, walk with purpose like Mus'ab, lead with strength like Umar, love with loyalty like Abu Bakr, and unite like the Ansar, you don't just change your life, you change the world. So stop playing small, Unleash the warrior within you and build a legacy that echoes through eternity. Let me tell you something that most people never realize until it's too late. Your life is not shaped by your conditions, it's shaped by your decisions. The companions of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't wait for perfect circumstances. They didn't wait for external permission to rise. They decided who they would become long before the world ever recognized them. And that decision, that commitment, it changed the course of history. Take a moment to reflect on Bilal ibn Rabah. He was born into a system designed to crush him. A black man, a slave, no rights. No status, no freedom, but when the message of Islam reached his ears, it pierced his soul, and he chose to rise, not because the system changed, not because someone handed him a throne, no, because he said, I serve none but Allah. And that one declaration, Ahadun Ahad, wasn't just words. It was a revolution that he carried in his heart, even while his body was being tortured. Imagine that, lying flat on burning sand with a massive stone pressing down on your chest. Your flesh is on fire, your ribs feel like they're cracking, and your tormentors are screaming at you to give up, to say something, anything, other than one God. And yet, all he says is Ahadun Ahad, over and over. Because Bilal had already made a decision. His freedom wasn't dependent on them. It was internal. It was spiritual. It was unshakable. That's the power you carry too. But here's the thing. Most people today are walking around chained by something invisible. They say, I'll change when I get that job. I'll step up when my situation improves. Or I'll give more once I have more. That's a lie, that's a trap, and it's time to break out of it. You don't wait for your environment to support your growth. You command your growth and shift the environment around you. The companions didn't say, we'll become leaders once the Quraysh approve. They said, we already are leaders and we will act like it until the world catches up. You don't need ideal conditions to become who you are meant to be. You need a decision. One clear, unstoppable, non-negotiable decision to step into your higher self. That's where it all begins. So many of us get stuck because we think greatness is reserved for special people. People with titles, degrees, a perfect background. That's a lie. The companions were not born with golden crowns on their heads. Most of them came from poverty, oppression, marginalization, and yet they became the most powerful leaders the world has ever seen. You want to talk about transformation? Look at Umar ibn al-Khattab. This was a man who once set out to kill the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That was his mission. He was aggressive, dominant, feared. But when he encountered the truth, when the Quran struck his heart like lightning, he didn't try to negotiate with it. He didn't try to dilute it. He embraced it, fully, fiercely. And when he did, he didn't sneak into Islam. He didn't hide. He stood tall. He walked to the Kaaba and declared to the Quraysh, I am Muslim. And then he dared them to do something about it, and they couldn't, not because of his physical strength alone, but because of the clarity and conviction he carried. That's what real courage is. It's not the absence of fear. It's walking through fear. It's facing your demon's head on and saying, you don't control me anymore. It's staring down a world that says, you're too much, and responding, then move out of my way. You think Umar wasn't afraid when he changed sides. Of course he was. But his fear didn't drive his decisions. His mission did. Fear will always be in the room, but you get to decide whether it sits in the driver's seat or not. Most people let fear whisper lies into their hearts. You're not ready. They'll laugh at you. What if you fail? But listen carefully. You don't rise by playing it safe. You rise by choosing to act in spite of the fear. Every great transformation in history started with someone stepping into the fire, uncertain, trembling, but willing to break patterns, willing to disappoint the crowd, willing to be mocked, misunderstood, even rejected. Because their soul was on fire for something greater. You have that same capacity, but you've got to stop negotiating with your fears. You've got to stop letting them set the rules of your life, because fear will shrink you if you let it. But faith will make you a giant. The companions of the Prophet sallallahu who alayhi wasallam weren't driven by fear. They were driven by purpose, and that purpose lit them up from the inside out. Purpose is the fuel that turns ordinary people into legends. When you know why you're doing something, the how doesn't intimidate you anymore. The pain becomes part of the process. The setbacks become sacred training. The obstacles become opportunities. Look at Mus'ab ibn Umayr. If you had seen him before Islam, you would have thought he had everything: the finest clothes, the most luxurious perfumes, wealth, status. He was the Prince of Mecca, but the moment Islam entered his heart, he didn't just believe it. He lived it. He gave up everything. His family disowned him. His wealth vanished. His comfort was stripped away. But he smiled. Why? Because he had found purpose, and that purpose gave him more joy than all the perfumes and silks in the world. Later, he would be sent as the first ambassador of Islam to Medina, as a young man. And by the time the Prophet ﷺ arrived, dozens of tribes were already Muslim. Why? Because of Mus'ab, because of his vision, because of his belief in something greater than himself. You want to be powerful, find your purpose, strip away the distractions, shut off the noise, get still long enough to hear what your soul is really craving, and then lock into that with everything you've got. Purpose will wake you up before the alarm clock. Purpose will drive you when the motivation is gone. Purpose will carry you through every storm and make you stronger on the other side. But there's something else the companions had, something most people overlook: unity. They were a true brotherhood, a force, not because they were the same, but because they chose to love and lift each other. Ego didn't drive them, service did. The Ansar of Medina welcomed the Muhajirun from Mecca like family. They shared their homes, their food, their wealth, not because they were forced to, but because they wanted to, because they saw something greater than themselves, and that unity created an unstoppable wave. Compare that to today. We're drowning in ego. Everyone's chasing status, likes, recognition. But the companions, they cried if someone beat them to a good deed. Not because of jealousy, but because of love. They wanted to be close to Allah, they wanted to serve, and when one of them rose, they didn't compete with hate. They competed with love. Abu Bakr and Umar would race in charity. And when Abu Bakr gave everything he owned, Umar didn't resent him, he admired him. That's a high-level mindset. That's what happens when ego dies and mission takes over. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam built more than a community. He built a bond, a sacred brotherhood. And that unity shook the empires of the world, because unity is a multiplier. You can be great on your own, but together you're unstoppable. You've got to ask yourself, who are you building with? Are the people around you pushing you to rise or pulling you back into comfort? Are you surrounding yourself with warriors or with spectators? You can't afford to walk this path alone. Even the strongest lion needs a pride. So drop the ego, find your tribe, and build something eternal together. That brings us to the final force the companions mastered: sacrifice. Real legacy isn't built in moments of applause. It's built in the quiet, painful, sometimes lonely moments when you give everything and expect nothing in return. Look at Abu Bakr. When the Prophet ﷺ called for donations to support the army of Tabuk, Abu Bakr didn't calculate what he could afford. He brought every dinar he owned, every coin, every garment, and when asked what he left behind for his family, he said, "I left them Allah and His Messenger." That's not just generosity, that's divine, level trust. That's the kind of faith that builds legacies that echo through time. And it's not just about money. Sacrifice shows up in time, in comfort, in reputation. The companions didn't just give their wealth, they gave their lives, they gave their sleep, their peace, their families. Because they knew nothing you give for Allah is ever lost, ever. You want a legacy, then ask yourself, what am I willing to give up for it? Because you don't get to keep your comfort zone and build a legend at the same time. One has to die for the other to live. The companions chose the harder path every single time, and that's why we're still talking about them today. Not because they were rich, not because they were perfect, but because they gave everything to what mattered most, and you can too. This is your moment, this is your time. Stop waiting. Stop negotiating with fear. Stop shrinking. The same fire that lit up Bilal, Mus'ab, Umar, Abu Bakr, and the rest that's inside you too. You are not here to survive. You are here to lead, to rise, to transform, to live a life that echoes. So don't die with your legacy still inside you. Don't let this world tame your spirit. Unleash the warrior within and become a legend of legacy